You're watching Fugitive Red Eye, and it's been quite a while since I've done a rant. And normally I do a rant in front of a webcam, just, saying what I think on a particular subject and just kind of bitch about it. And, it's all my personal take on things, obviously. I mean, occasionally I do research for these sorts of things. But really, a lot of the times it's just what I come to on personal grounds. So, today's rant is about a topic that's I'm very passionate about. And that would be censorship. Throughout the history of the media, there's been a lot of controversy about violence and sexuality. I've played video games for a long time, and I have always been irritated by the ridiculous amount of censorship put into them. It's not just video games, however, but the media in general. The First Amendment has been created to give us freedom of expression. My question is this really the case? Video games have always been a release of built-up aggression for me, rather than something to set me off. When I'm feeling angry or stressed, I can come home and I play a good first-person shooter. It helps me release built-up anger on a healthier outlet. I ask you this: is it better to shoot digital people on a video screen in a fictional universe, or real people in the real world? I have always felt video games are a good release from reality, and they sort of alleviate tension for me. Now, freedom of speech should be a self-explanatory term. However, it seems that as a society we have deemed what is okay to talk about and what is not. We protect our own views with a passion, while not respecting others' rights to do the same. My suggestion is, if we don't agree with someone, express our disagreement, then move on and let them be. We should do this because we would expect the same courtesy. The point I am trying to make is that it seems people are determining what is and isn't acceptable to bring up in conversation, with all the PC stuff that's been going around lately, things like that. To do this, we allow ourselves to be restricted, therefore effectively eliminating our First Amendment. To make my point about how important free speech is, I would like to quote a South Park episode, Cartoon Wars Part 1, in which Mr. Stotch, that's Butter's dad, for those of you who don't know, who is played by Trey Parker, says if we aren't willing to risk what we have, then we just believe in free speech, but we don't defend it. To me, that just shows that we should not let anything intimidate us into censoring ourselves. If parents are concerned about what their children are watching, that's what we have the rating system for, as well as there are also V-chips and other parental control devices. Video game retailers do not stock games with an ERSB, that's the Electronic Software Ratings Board, for those of you who don't know. They don't stock games with an AO or 18+ rating, and they won't sell an M-rated game or 17+ to anyone under 17. To prevent selling them to people that are underage, they ID them when you make an M-rated purchase. Not to mention the ERSB does list the reasons why the games are rated on the back of the case. Now, to help establish my point even further, allow me to introduce a different and somewhat laughable point of view from an individual whose identity I will protect by referring to him as Kanye. His name is not really Kanye, but I figured that's what I'll call him. He is a man in his mid-30s, and I'm not going to say what his profession is because I don't want to give anything away about his person. Let's just say he works in law enforcement, and he's not a real cop. That is perhaps, he's a little too arrogant for his own good. He is divorced and has 2 unruly sons. But to put it politely, he is a very opinionated man. Needless to say, his views do not represent my views. Another person I would like to mention is my mother. I will include her to show the differences between children who grow up in an open, honest environment and those who are heavily sheltered from quote-unquote inappropriate things. Kanye and I have argued on multiple occasions, I apologize, about the subject most frequently. Most frequently in regard to his children. But anyways, as that goes, just a moment, I'm running out of video here. Anyway, as I was saying, we've argued on multiple accounts about the subject of censorship frequently, mostly in regards to his children. His two unruly sons, which I mentioned earlier. You know, he has, whenever his sons fight, he tries to blame it on the television. Let's see here. Well, like he'll say something like, "This is your guys' fault," in reference to my brothers and I, and he says it's our fault for the inappropriate shows that we watch in front of his children. He says that, you know, the TV, every time his kids get in a fight, he blames the TV, and takes no responsibility as himself as a father. He doesn't acknowledge that his kids are in the wrong, and nothing is ever their fault or his fault. It is always TV's fault, and he is blameless. As I said, that makes it so that he doesn't really accept any responsibilities as a father. Again, that's Kanye for you. Not Kanye West, but Kanye, the person I'm speaking about. Anyway, on one instance, he actually told me that anime is nudity. Not that it contains nudity, but that the subject of anime in and of itself is the concept of nudity. Then he went on to describe the plot to an ecchi anime, which I've never seen, but I've heard of. He described the plot to a very specific series in great detail. So it's pretty obvious he's seen it. So, what does that say about his argument there? He can't, another thing he fails to realize is that one of his son's favorite shows, Pokemon, is an anime, so he can't really take anything he says truly to heart, because he doesn't really know what the fuck he's talking about. Anyway, so in my experience, it's almost always the more sheltered kids who are more violent, at least in my personal experience from what I've seen. His two sons are constantly fighting and being disrespectful to everyone. Again, they're really sheltered and not allowed to watch hardly anything. SpongeBob SquarePants and Adventure Time are too bad for them. Inappropriate. But, they're censored from violence and sexuality to a way more ridiculous degree. Now, I'm not saying they should go out and watch like a graphic splatter film like Saw, or watch a porno, or something like that. But there is a point where parents just need to be honest with their kids. Let me give another comparison. My mother has always been open and honest with my brothers and me about any subject. No matter how mature the subject may be, as a result, my brothers and I have a good knowledge of things. When I asked her on her thoughts about the subject, she responded thusly: "I have always felt that it is better to be open and honest with children so that they can understand the way the world works." The purpose of this paper, or the purpose of this video, I should say, in case you couldn't tell, I am reading this off a paper I wrote about a year ago on the subject, so I'm ad-libbing some parts to be more natural, but there you go, there's a little behind-the-scenes thing, unintentionally. But yeah, as far as that goes, the purpose of this video is to educate people, essentially, on my thoughts at least. You know, to encourage parents, and anyone really, to, rather than censor things from their children, educate them. Show them the way the world works and put it into a proper context. That way they know what is acceptable, what is not, and where it is acceptable. The idea of sheltering kids from everything that is considered inappropriate is harmful, because if a kid encounters something that they haven't been properly taught about, it can confuse them. Sorry about that. Now here's a few points that one could make against my claim. One might ask if teaching kids about this controversial subject matter will satiate their Let me start that sentence over. I'm sorry, it's hard to read off this. I usually don't script my rants, but this paper I wrote as my first semester of college, so like I said, about a year ago. And I really like how it turned out, so anyway, where was I? So one might ask about teaching kids, if teaching kids about this will satiate their curiosity or simply cause them to desire to delve deeper into the taboo. However, I would respond with this: if you ignore a kid's question outright, then they will just go to other sources to get their answer. Another argument is going to be up in a moment because I'm running out of video again. As I was saying, another argument one could make is that there are subjects which parents themselves aren't familiar with, and therefore cannot put them into a proper context. To that I say, sometimes in life it doesn't hurt to say the three little words, "I don't know." Naturally, this will leave the child disappointed, but it will help them feel that they are on the same level with the parent and that the parent is honest with them. Personally, video game violence has always acted as a release to help me get rid of my built-up aggression. It helps alleviate stress and keeps me from committing real acts of violence. To help support this statement, I would like to add a quote from an article which Christopher Ferguson wrote in the Journal of Youth and Adolescence. In it, he states, "It is noteworthy that the explosion in popularity and availability of video games has coincided with a precipitous decline in youth violence, not a rise." Now, to me, that shows that given an outlet for violence, youth were more docile in comparison than before. In conclusion, I would like to state that censorship can be harmful to youth because it takes away from that secure outlet to help relieve stress. The responsibility of how children turn out should fall on parents rather than the media. We should put things presented in a proper context to help them understand what is socially acceptable rather than trying to shift the blame onto these virtual taboos. Now, that's the end of the paper, so the rest of this video is back to our traditional unscripted red-eye things. But, another thing I'd like to bring up is when anime comes over stateside, it gets heavily censored. One thing that springs immediately to mind is Dead Man Wonderland. These days, you can't get a copy of Dead Man Wonderland uncensored at all in the US. It's just not possible. I mean, yeah, they uncensor the English audio tracks so that you can hear them swear, but all the gore and things like that are still censored out, unfortunately. And to me, that's just distracting, because you can obviously tell where it's censored. Something else I'd like to bring up is I think it's funny how we gauge what is considered taboo and what is not. For instance, when I was a kid, I could play video games that had all sorts of violence, but as soon as somebody said fuck, oh no, that's bad. We got everything all ass backwards here. Sex is considered worse than violence, and language is considered worse than violence. But even so, I think that any kind of censorship really does derive against our freedom of speech. And this has been Fugitive Red Eye. Let me know what you thought in the comments below, of course, if you agree with me or if you disagree with me. And thanks for watching.